So a couple things about working in a DAW that are just generally good practice. The first is I would say keep your program updated. Whenever there's new updates that come out, run them. If you're doing professional work and want to be working at a professional level, you should always be working on the latest tools. So keep your application up to date. When there's a major update, like when it shifts by a number, like Ableton 10 to Ableton 11, that you might stop and think about for a few days to decide when it's a good time to convert. But for little updates, things that are like live 10.2 to 10.3, that would be considered a little update, then just run them. Run them because they're probably going to make your program more stable, and they might even give you some new features. So always just keep everything up to date. Now, for those big updates, I also recommend that you work on the latest version, but keep in mind that you can't go backwards. So if you do something in Ableton Live 11, for example, you can no longer open it in Ableton Live 10. You can't go backwards, but you can always go forward. Anything you made in Ableton Live 10, you will be able to open in Ableton Live 11. That's true of all software, I think. But I do recommend you're on the highest number, latest version, whatever it's called. Second thing to keep in mind, if you want to be doing professional work, get the biggest version of the program. If you start with something like going back to FL Studio, like those smaller versions of FL Studio, that's fine. But make it a goal to graduate up to the highest version. You'll get to a point where you're like, I can't do anything with this program anymore. Then it's time to update to the newest version. The more you use it, the more you learn it, the more you'll become aware of the limitations that the lighter version, the smaller version, the cheaper version has. So always make it a goal of getting to the biggest version as time and money, mostly money, allows. With that being said, let's talk about having a cracked version of the software. Now, I know a lot of people are totally fine with working on cracked software. That means, if you're not familiar, that means you've basically downloaded the software off some website somewhere and you didn't legally buy it. I'm not a warrior about this. I don't really care about stuff like that. You do what you got to do. However, let me just seed this into your head. Once you make something with that software and you're making money, then buy that software. Cool? Can we come to agreement on that? And I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. Especially true if you're working with one of the smaller companies, right? Ableton, for example, there's no parent company to Ableton. Ableton makes Ableton, and that's how they employ a bunch of people. And they're all such good people. So buy the software. But if you buy a copy of Logic and, give Apple another $100, is it going to change anyone's life? Probably not. So maybe consider that. But there's another downside, and that's that cracked software often has problems, right? Like if you're into using this kind of software, you've probably encountered problems with it. The biggest problem is that you usually can't update it, and so you're locked into whatever you have, and it might have some glitches in it because of the cracking process, that process of removing the license verification stuff. So I'll just reiterate, you do what you got to do. I'd rather you were making music than not making music. So do what you got to do to get the software to make music. But if you ever make something and you sell it, if you sell a track, the minute you make $1 with music you've made, promise me you'll get rid of that cracked copy and buy a legal copy. Or before. Always better to have the full legit version so that you can update it, you can get support, you can get extensions to it. I mean, if you have a cracked version of Ableton and you go to Ableton and say, I have a cracked version of Live Lite, can I upgrade to Suite? They're going to say no. But if you have a legal version and you try to upgrade to Suite, then yeah, it's cheap to do. So, okay, enough on that. Do what you got to do, but think about the little people working at the company. Okay, let's move on.